This is Anchored and Devoted. I'm Dave Joseph, and that other brother
Hey, Dave. It's Jer.
is Jim. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's a good
Good.
morning. It's a good day.
It is. We've had a little bit of rain and still a lot more sunshine. Not today, just in general.
It wasn't raining when I got this morning, so I just went and sat outside for quite a while and enjoyed. It was, still a little bit humid, but it wasn't that oppressive humidity. It was just kind of that warm air, even though it was mostly cool out.
Yeah, this morning was much nicer than today right now.
It was. And for you, I'm sure that this morning was probably nicer than yesterday morning because you were significantly south of where we are right now.
Yes.
Yesterday.
Yeah. Yes. So I am glad to be back in the happy state of Maryland. And
When Maryland humidity is a relief, you know that where you are is oppressive.
love you, South Carolina. Love to see you in the rearview mirror. No, just kidding. I do.
I wanted you to be south of the border.
Goodness. Oh, okay. Anyway, we're talking about community groups today.
Small groups,
And you
care
missed
groups.
my hands.
Lots of different names that people give this.
Life groups. I think that's the ones that I know the most of. Some have discipleship groups, but most call them community groups. And so why are we talking about this today? I know why I want to talk about it. Why do you want to talk about it?
The title that I gave this, as I was being a little bit flippant, was the problem with small groups.
Okay.
I do think that there are inherent problems with small groups. I think that there's pitfalls that small groups can fall into: lack of training for the leaders, lack of focus within the group. There's a number of different ways that this can go off the rails, and sometimes off the rails really badly, most of the times pretty innocuously. But I also think that the problem, I guess, that I would want to highlight the most is that small groups, care groups, whatever name you want to give them, have at least two purposes. And it's easy to miss those purposes. But the primary purpose of a group like this is at least fundamentally relational. And I think that's one of the areas where they actually encounter a problem. And I don't necessarily think it's a problem with the venue or with the format. I think it's actually a problem with the participants. And so I'm going to go ahead and pause it here. I think the problem with small groups is actually that people don't want what small groups are designed to foster.
So what do you mean by that? Because I have my own thoughts.
Sure.
Or you want me to go?
No. You ask me, I'll answer. Small groups are designed to foster deeper relationships of accountability, of support, of intimacy from a spiritual perspective, but also from a relational and from a societal perspective, where as you and I are in small group together week after week, we're sharing each other's burdens, we're sharing each other's fears, we're sharing each other's concerns, struggles, and we're also sharing in each other's celebrations and joys. And as a result of doing that for a period of time, it develops an intimacy and a trust so that when we're not in a small group and something good happens in my life, I don't have to wait until Tuesday night. I just pick up the phone and I call you, or I text out to a few people in my group and say, hey, this just happened, and we all celebrate together. And the next summer we go on vacation together because we're actually knitting our lives together in a way that isn't just a social group, but what it's actually building in is community, true community, deep, long-lasting. I know that your breath stinks. I know you've got toe fungus. I love you anyway. Community. Yes, I'm willing to point out and say, hey, you shouldn't talk to your wife that way. That is disrespectful to her. It's undermining your marriage. It's undermining your kids' future marriages because they're seeing a really bad example from you. And I don't believe that's your heart because I know you. And I'm calling you something better. And I'm challenging you with something that is hard because I've earned the trust because you know I love you. And I'm not going to reject you. I'm going to walk with you through this. That requires vulnerability, not just transparency. And in our context, there's a faux vulnerability because we can put everything up on Instagram or Facebook, we can curate how people see us, how we show ourselves to the world. And we can feel like we're being vulnerable. We can feel like we're being exposed. What we're actually doing is simply using a different type of stucco to build a wall between me and whoever it is that's looking at me. And if I walk into my community group or my small group, or my connect group, or whatever name I'm going to give it, if I walk into it with the same predilection to hide myself behind a curated facade, I run into the problem with small groups. And that is, I'm not getting out of it what I should because I'm not coming into it willing to give what's necessary, which is vulnerability.
And so I will piggyback off your vulnerability, even though that's not my big issue. I do think for most community groups there is a monocultural mindset, even if the group is diverse. You know, doctors clump together, teachers will clump together. Like there is typically with most community groups not a diverse community group in the way that causes people to be challenged. You have, community groups that are typically made up of young adults or seniors, often trying to revolve around a certain stage in life. And out of that, you miss the mature or different voices that would cause for growth. Example, if you don't have any seniors in your group, then you don't have someone who can, challenge you and speak their story into your life, help you see that, no, this is something, that God brought me through. And yes, we're in group together. Just as if I don't have any young people in my group, I miss the opportunity to see and remember what God has already done in my life, and then also seek to help others. I view my time as my own, and I miss those opportunities. So I know that's one of the things that I have with community groups. A second thing would be the most community groups don't seek to impact their community. They seem to be a community, and that's a big issue for me. I like the group as an agent for community, because in our culture, community, I don't want to say it's been lost, but it's been ambushed by all the cares of the world. And so there is, at least in my estimation, in a space of mega, the busyness of life has destroyed community.
Right.
And so I see community groups as being, as you stated, a good place to be vulnerable. It's not where most people do it or how most people do it, but it is true, especially over seasons as they become more enmeshed and similar. I also know that the reason we're here is to impact the community around us for Christ. And often that isn't part of being in a community group. I will see some service projects every now and then. So I'm not going to lie, I do see those. But I don't see a willingness to invite people into the community group unless they fit a pattern or a mold that's already been set. I rarely see a discipleship model that is seen in community group that's actually seeking to disciple, whether it's the kids that are in the group or strangers or neighbors in their community, or just new attender members / just got baptized, looking to connect. And, oh no, we're full. We've got enough. And so one of my issues with community groups is that they are often very much a big clique and not, a clique for Christ. They read Bibles, they pray, and they support one another. And that is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It is a bad thing when it comes to if you're not in it. It's a bad thing when it doesn't cause you to live out your faith and challenge you in ways that are real. It's something that I think can be done better, just to be honest. I don't think it's something that should be thrown away. I think it's something that needs intentionality, that mirrors more of the original church. And as you stated, the challenging of one another, the supporting of one another. Often the support is there when there's a loss. At least that's what I see. I rarely see the support when it comes to an affair or abuse that needs to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Often it's, oh no, they just need to get out of the group. And I've seen more groups split over race than I have over anything else. Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for coming by. I'm kidding.
Just leave him
That's
in the
a
hole.
joke. That's a joke. So what do we do about it? Right? We can, and I'm sure that we could, our autopsy hasn't gone far enough. Autopsy is the wrong word. Autopsy assumes it's dead. It's not. I don't think it should be killed. And you just agree to that. So what do we do about this? I'll tell you how I think about this. I don't necessarily have the same concerns that you do, at least not in the same way. I agree. They are very community based within themselves, and they aren't necessarily moving out into the communities around them. But I, in my mind, community groups, small groups, whatever you want to call them, are kind of like a family. It's sort of an adoptive family idea where I'm coming together with you and we're setting up our own identity here that includes all of us and the differences and distinctions, because we have both an agreed intention for relationship, but beyond that, there's generally something else that we're providing for each other, to each other, that we see as a greater good than any one of us, and that all of us necessarily need. And we're not trying to be it for everyone, right? I'm not trying to make everyone in the world a Sephardi. I don't want to bring everyone in the world into the Sephardi family. It wouldn't work.
Yeah. Well,
the Sephardi family has its own identity. However, to the point that you're making, there's two forces within a system, right? When you have a closed system, which a group is, there's two forces. There's a force from outside pushing in, that where everyone within the group wants to focus inward, and there's a force focusing outward from the group to say, well, we want to be looking from where we are to what's outside of us and moving towards that. And there's a necessary balance that has to be reached, and that balance has to be first defined as a goal. We have to say, this is why we're doing this. The reason that we're together is not just to grow in a relationship, but we're actually trying to disciple each other, because that's what Christ called us to do. And making disciples does not simply mean doing Bible study. It does not simply mean bringing our prayer requests and providing babysitting for an hour and a half each week. It actually means spurring each other on to be presenting the gospel and going and working together to be strengthened in our faith as we care for the poor, as we go and do what James called true religion, visiting the orphans and the widows, and keeping ourselves unspotted from the world. That's an outward-facing orientation.
Correct. And that's my concern. Like, that's
I hear that. It's a very legitimate concern.
If that isn't a natural part, and this gets to the I never knew you, if this isn't a natural part of your life and it isn't a part of your group, then I got a question. Okay, do you love him? It's not, are you feeling safe in your group that you can be vulnerable and share? But if none of the sharing is about how you should actually share Christ, or we're challenged by God's Spirit to love the least of these, that causes me to pause. Is it actually, I was thinking of a cell group, part of the body is, you mentioned that before. Is it something that's living? Even once the kids graduate out of the group,
right?
The group still doesn't bring people in. As the kids get bigger and they can actually babysit and help others, we still don't invite anyone in. This is a group. Is it more for me or is it more for God? And it's not, am I reading the Bible or are we praying together? It's, what is it for? Again, not saying it should be demoed, but saying it needs to be renovated so that it is, in my view, something that you can't mistake. So when I do say, let's do a Christmas party and invite all of the least of these because we want to reach out, it's, this is something that we do. Maybe the other groups don't do it, but this is something that we do.
Okay. So put your sledgehammer away then. What would you change? What would you do? How would you remake this?
How would I remake community groups? That's a good question. We should have probably prepared for this, huh?
That's okay. Take as much time as you want. I can edit.
I do believe I would, and I don't know, you could be in a community group like this and you're in the perfect one and God bless you, but
right.
I'm just talking about the ones that I've been involved in. I do think I would find some way to make prayer more central to the community groups, not just as we are together, but even as we're apart. I do think knowing that we are praying together for one another and for the issues that are important to us, parents to parents, kids to kids, but then also parents for kids and the other kids. And I think that's important. I think building a rhythm for service into the community is important, just as, as you stated, part of it for ourselves, but then also for others.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe there should be something, for ourselves. Like if we do Thanksgiving for ourselves, then great. And if we do Christmas for others, great. Whatever it is, Easter for others, whatever the rhythm is. But there's something that is there. I also do believe that there should be roles for everyone in the group, not just the leader. And I think the roles should shift so that people mature, because it's as you said, it's like family. As you mature, your role changes. I also believe there should be an expectation at some point that the kids will graduate into their own group as opposed to just leave for college. Whether it's a teen group or a discipleship group or something like that. And I also think that there should be the expectation of, and this is me, that there should be multiplication. The group should expand. I don't see why I have to stop talking to you if I'm in a different group. Just as I don't see why we can't come back into another group as we multiply later.
Right.
I just don't see why it has to be the same the entire 30 years.
Depending on the church that you're in, the purpose for your small group is likely distinct from someone else's church. In my experience, denominations view small groups through a denominational prism, if you will. One denomination might view small groups as being primarily about building and strengthening relationships. One might view it as being primarily about growing in biblical knowledge, doing Bible study. One might view it as specifically a way to be together, to go with intercession and prayer. One might view it as a way to be active in the community, to go and being Christ's hands and feet in the world around them. But the point I'm making here is that based on the church that you're in, the church itself as an organism, the leadership of the congregation have likely already given thought to what small groups ought to be, the purpose that they ought to fulfill, and how they do it. So a part of what is going on here is you need to look and say, why has my church put these small groups together? And is the reason that they are giving accurate and sufficient? And I don't mean sufficient like it's not a good enough reason. Is it complete? Is it accurate to what Scripture calls us together to? And is it complete? Has it left things out that Scripture has called us to? I think for the small groups themselves, again, I've already said that I think that most small groups are pulled together as a group of people that doesn't have a whole lot of training or mentoring or coaching associated with it. It's left to sort of whoever the most dynamic person is in the group who's willing to say, yes, I'll open up my home, or yes, I'll prepare whatever for the weekly thing, and it'll fall on that person, and they'll prepare whatever it is that they're passionate about.
Till they burn out.
Till they burn out. I don't typically see churches really investing in and pouring into those leaders to make sure that they are equipped, that they're growing, that they are being discipled themselves, not just in Scripture, but also in how to run a group like this, how to maintain a focus. And then at the sort of upper level here, I look at this organizationally. When I look at a company, if a company doesn't know why they're doing what they're doing, they don't stay a company very long. If they don't know what it is that they bring to the world that sets them apart from everyone else around them, all of their competition, they will go out of business very quickly. I don't get the sense that the majority of small groups have that same sort of understanding, implicit understanding of what their why is. And I think that most people that I've encountered, at least in small groups, have been pretty comfortable with a why that is subpar. Well, why am I here? Because I have friends here and I really enjoy being with them. That's wonderful. But why are you doing that here in small group? Why is that the bar that you're saying, as long as I get over this, we're good? Is there more that you've left out? And I think it really does fall on the group as a whole. I do think it falls on the leader to maintain a very clear understanding, a very clear description of why we're doing what we're doing, why we're still together. But I think it also falls to the group to be pressing and maintaining that same manner. Because I'll be honest, it's really easy for a group to abdicate the responsibility of maintaining a focus to the leader because, hey, he's got it. He's the one leading. And I might not even necessarily agree with him, but he's got it. So I'm good to let him run with it. And I'm just going to be here and I'll eat the cookies at the beginning. And I'll drink the coffee and I'll talk about how my aunt has a bunion and we can pray about that. And I'll leave. And I'll say to myself, hey, wasn't that nice? That's a nice group of people. I've done my Christian service for the week and I can walk away completely unchanged. And at the same time, I can look and say small groups also have a rhythm, a life rhythm. Small groups should look more like the world that you live in. And just like the world you live in has people being born and people being buried, small groups should either exhibit that themselves or should themselves being birthed and then buried. Because as we grow and seasons change, there comes a time to hang something up. Let's say, nope, season for that was yesterday. Season for today is something different. So we're going to reform. We're going to go our separate ways. We're going to get into a different way because of where we are now. I think some churches do that better than others, but I think on the whole, this is just my opinion. I don't get the sense that there is a lot of intentional, ongoing thought given to how and why small groups and small group ministries are done the way they are. And I don't want to cast aspersions here. I'm sure there are many, many, many churches that are doing it really well and are doing exactly what I'm talking about, or even things I haven't talked about because they have thought about this intentionally in a way I haven't. And they could sit here and say, yeah, well, you've left out all these other things that we are doing because this is what's necessary. I don't doubt that at all. And I hope to see more of it. I know we can, and I would certainly like to. So I am a fan of small groups. I do think that they have problems. I'm a fan of people. People have problems too. I'm a fan of churches. Churches have huge problems. I'm a fan of cars. Cars have problems. I'm a fan of marriage. Marriage has problems. I'm a fan of cake. Cake has no problems.
Oh my goodness. Who's truth on that? No, just kidding. I will encourage you, brother or sister in Christ, to be willing to challenge leadership as well as to support leadership as they see a better way. Encourage your group to do better and do it before the bad things happen.
Yeah.
Don't wait until you find out about, been in this group for years and thought everything was fine, and then come to find out the person who was leading it was the one having the affair, whatever. Mm-hmm. Make vulnerability a part of the culture of the group, just as you lift the word up on a weekly basis and seek to live it out. practice living out the word. Whether it's sharing Christ with one person every week as a group, and holding each other accountable for that and just seeing how that works. Just as praying for the lost and praying for those in your group. Praying for family members of those members in your community group. All that's important. Just as it's important to do it as a larger body, the church. So be encouraged. You got work to do. Be encouraged.
There it is.
Rapture is one day closer.
Thank you, Dave. It's always good to talk with you, buddy.
Good to talk to you as well. Love you much.
You as well, my friend. Listeners, thank you for coming by. You know that you can reach us at anchoredanddevoted@gmail.com. You know that Daily Gains will be coming later this year. We do invite you to subscribe there. If you want to, I'm also working on a new podcast project called the Church Renewal Podcast, which is going to launch in early mid-September. I encourage you to go give that a listen. If you're interested in hearing a discussion about church transition, what that is. Very interesting stuff over there. Won't get into it here. Just give it a little plug. Come on back. We will talk to you soon. We love you much.